All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Tuesday in December, the first Tuesday of December the 3rd. And I got this look on my screen. I just don't like it, the way the photos, it's this fisheye effect, the way the photos kind of sprawl out from the top. It's probably because I'm just using a relatively inexpensive camera. They say it's good. It's the Logitech 920, I believe, or whatever it is. It's supposed to be good, and it's very clear, right? You get the high def, but that fisheye drives me a little bit crazy. I probably shouldn't have mentioned it because now everyone else will see the same thing that I'm seeing and not liking it. So just real quick, let me just show the screen again, the image I'm using, my thumbnail. I don't always talk about the thumbnails, but every now and then. So you can see here is Trump. I'm just going to show real quick. Can he make things even worse? You see the smoke or dust rising in the background. That's Gaza City, where Israel blew up a building. And I'm going to show the video of that blow up as well. I believe I have it here for you in a little bit. But the date, and I circled it in pink at the top left, or magenta, I think is what it's called, October 12. So this is before the election this year, Biden-Harris administration, and the entire region is a shell. It's just been ruined completely, or largely eradicated. People just wandering around like ghosts throughout that area. So can he make things even worse? He says there will be hell to pay. We'll get that quote a little bit later from his I don't know, it's this new social media platform that's apparently just for conservatives. I actually joined it to find the clip. Truth Social, that's right. I love these names, these Orwellian nicknames, or names that these places take. But maybe it'll get worse. I argued it could hardly get worse, which is one of the reasons that I urged you to vote for Jill Stein. I had indicated that I would be open to, in fact, I would vote for Harris if she would just say that she would do something differently in Gaza. But she swore she would do everything exactly the same. And we are seeing an entire group of people, an ethnic group being cleansed, being wiped out. And those who say, well, they're not trying to kill, Israel isn't trying to kill all Palestinians, then should also look at what's happening in the West Bank. We'll talk about that in this program as well. I want to just put up on screen for a moment a little challenge I had. I know there's always talk about censorship, about Big Brother overseeing what we post online, and limiting our ability to speak to each other, right? Reducing our freedom of speech. Glenn Greenwald thinks that big tech oversight, or tech oversight, could be the scariest aspect, the most terrifying, characteristic of our current move away from democracy in this country. The way big tech companies in league with the government are reducing our ability to communicate with each other and exerting maximum control. And he may be right. I know some of you have argued we need oversight, that people can't be trusted with this freedom. There's too much possibility that foreign governments will fool us, will take advantage of our gullibility, our credulity. And we have seen certainly that powerful special interests like AIPAC absolutely control the narrative and push public opinion in certain directions. So that is something to be very worried about. I think the way you address that is not by ever limiting individuals' ability to post, but rather by limiting organizations, corporations, and perhaps governments as well. So the reason I bring all that up is, and you can sort of see, it's not real clear, but there is the post I tried to paste on Instagram, because I promote my program in lots of different places, and one of those places is Instagram. And yeah, let me just check and see if, no callers yet, but I'm going to have to check and make sure my ringer works. In any event, I tried to post, as I mentioned, I always do post if I can, or I have always been posting lately on Instagram, and there's the thumbnail, Can Trump Make Things Even Worse? You can see I'm trying to post it. That's my Instagram account. You can see the Halitics logo at the top right, and Hal Ginsberg. And when I clicked the share, which is the top right of the pop-up in the middle, you can even see the little arrow there as I'm about to click share. And then I do click share, and then this pops up. Your post could not be shared. Please try again. And I, frankly, am not clear why that happened. And I did try again. I tried with several different images. Well, the same image, but using slightly different a different style, right? Instead of a PNG, I tried the JPEG, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter which format I used. It's simply the Instagram would not let me post that, and I wonder whether I'm not a conspiracy guy or any of that, but I do wonder, maybe because there was Trump's head, possibly they wouldn't let me post it. I really don't know, but I hope it was just some weird glitch or what have you. I, again, reduced the size of the image, but I'll keep track of this. I've always been somewhat dubious about these claims, always felt people maybe were a bit too alarmist, because we do have this incredible ability to communicate with each other, and my ability hasn't been hindered. My ability to get big audience numbers has been hindered, and that maybe as some have said, there's some algorithm that looks at me and doesn't like what I'm doing. I don't know. I tend to think it's just my message is a little bit too dark. It's not a happy one. It's not something that people really want to hear, and I think that may be the bigger factor. But Lord knows what's really going on, and maybe it is some kind of censorship, some kind of effort to mute my message. And there the phone rang. I don't know if you caught that at all, but just trying to make sure people will be able to get through and call if they wish. And I also know, sometimes we don't get that. The phones don't always work for some folks, so just post a text if that's the situation. Speaking of the situation in Gaza, just as it's getting worse right now. The question we ask is, can Trump make it even worse? And he says they'll be all hell to pay, as though hell isn't already being paid by the Gazans. His nominee for FBI director, Kash Patel, and I may have been a little too soft on Patel yesterday, maybe not as critical as I should have been, but Patel has said that when Trump, he said this, maybe it was in the early fall, in late September, early October of this year, when he was considered to be the leading candidate for CIA director, and now he's going to be FBI director. So I have to say, I think he's a terrible choice. He seems completely unqualified. If he was going to dismantle the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I'd be like, okay, fine, take it apart, break it up. We don't need this government oversight, this spying agency that has violated the civil rights of Americans for 100 years, since the Palmer raids in the 1920s. We don't need it. So if you're going to dismantle the FBI, I don't necessarily think we should dismantle the FBI, but we certainly need it to be completely reorganized and controlled by civilians, and all sorts of steps taken to prevent its abuse of power, which again we've seen for over 100 years, and in ways that have been extraordinarily harmful to democracy, including spying on communists. In the early 20s, the Palmer raids led by J. Edgar Hoover, who parlayed his fame as a red buster into becoming the FBI director for many, many years, on into his spying on Dr. King in the 60s and the use of the FISA courts now by the CIA, and I believe the FBI, to spy on us without any real process that is under the Constitution due. So for all those reasons, look, if you want to dismantle it, Patel, fine. But what he said is he's going to use this agency to get back at enemies. And I said, was there really retribution, vengeance? I question that. He said that at one point. It's very scary. We'll play some clips and see if I got it wrong or if I got it not, or I told half-truths yesterday. But just to start with Gaza, Israel bombs Gaza, ceasefire with Hezbollah hangs by a thread. So bad news. Looks like that ceasefire that Biden touted isn't looking like it's likely to hold. It's already been violated both by Hezbollah and Israel, much more so, of course, by Israel. But Hezbollah also launching retaliatory strikes into Israel as a result of Israel's ongoing brutality. In Gaza, though, 36 Palestinians killed in the last 24-hour period concluded, I believe, at midnight Tuesday. And what you see there, as bad as that is, and that is, we're not going to minimize that, as horrible, as horrific as that news is, even worse, food availability at an all-time low across the entire Gaza Strip. Israel isn't just blockading, preventing aid from getting into Gaza. Remember what, and by the way, didn't Biden say they were considering cutting Israel off because they might be violating the requirement in U.S. law that countries that receive any kind of military assistance can never stop U.S. humanitarian aid? And there was a question, well, maybe they are. So we'll decide a month later in early November. And the decision was, they're not doing anything wrong, so we'll let them go ahead and keep getting our bombs and our machine guns and our missiles. And yet we see right now, according to the UN, despite all the compliance by Israel, at least as Anthony Blinken says, despite all that compliance, food supplies are at an all-time low. It's just unimaginably horrible. It's unimaginably ugly, wrong, immoral. And this is all the Harris-Biden administration. Could Trump make it worse? I mean, he threatens to. He says he will. Fingers crossed, maybe he won't. How it could be worse, I'm not clear. Some say that he'll step up the killing so that the complete elimination of the Palestinian people and certainly the Gazan Palestinians will be completed sooner rather than later. 44,500 plus Gazans killed since October 7th by the Biden-Harris administration in league with Israel. Let's see. Let's get this here. Let me just make sure I have the right one. I'm going to play this video. I think it's this is the aid workers with the Jose Andres group that were targeted and killed. These are humanitarian aid workers. Israel says, Anthony Blinken has told us. The Biden-Harris State Department has said that Israel is not preventing needed humanitarian supplies, including obviously food, from getting into Gaza. This is from yesterday, I believe it's USA News in D.C.
Turning now to the war between Israel and Gaza, 3 members of D.C.-based charity World Central Kitchen were killed in Gaza after their car was struck by an Israeli airstrike. Israel says one of those workers was part of the October 7th attack by Hamas, but did not provide any evidence. His family denies that.
They never do, right? I mean, they always say they have this evidence. They always justify, does Israel killing people, or it's a regrettable accident. I've had people call this show, friends say, oh, well, war sucks. It's, Hamas never should have started it, as though Israel hadn't been oppressing, persecuting, and lording it over Palestinians for 75 years.
World Central Kitchen was created by Chef Jose Andres, with their goal being to provide meals to those in crisis. Deborah Pata is in East Jerusalem with the latest.
It's been a deadly day for humanitarian workers in Gaza after an Israeli strike ripped through a World Central Kitchen vehicle. Strewn among the mangled metal, the most humble of items, potatoes, carrots and onions being transported to feed desperately hungry Palestinians. 2 eyewitnesses said that a second strike followed soon after, killing 2 young men. They were trying to rescue them, Tamir said, but they were hit by the second rocket. Among the dead, the much-loved Azem Abu Daka, who ran the World Central Kitchen in the south. His heartbroken widow, Abir, collapsing from grief, was inconsolable. And a colleague who came to collect his belongings could not hold back her tears. As conditions become increasingly dire in Gaza, family and friends of hostages still being held captive there took to the streets again with a new sense of urgency, demanding their freedom. Demonstrators watched a Hamas propaganda video released today, the first proof of life of Israeli-American hostage Idan Alexander since he was taken captive on October 7.
I cannot believe I didn't saw Idan for 421 days, and suddenly to see him alive and speaking, and when he cried, I just want to hold him.
The hostage video comes as Egypt has proposed a new ceasefire deal to secure the release of the more than 100 hostages in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas officials are currently in Cairo for talks. Deborah Patter, CBS News, East Jerusalem.
All right, so again, there's about a month or so, a little more than a month before Trump takes power, and that's the last hope, I think, that some kind of certainly last hope before Trump takes power, that something can be worked out. Trump, again, threatening to rain down hell on the Palestinians if Hamas doesn't release the hostages. But the only way to release them is, again, some kind of a negotiation, some kind of a deal where Israel provides some guarantee for the safety. And so that Israel has been utterly unwilling to do, will not agree to take its boot off the throat of the Palestinian people as it pushes harder and harder down on the airflow into that region. And I see those videos and you see all the blown up buildings, and you just have to wonder, where are these folks living? I guess they're tent cities, and they go back to apartments that have had half of the facades ripped off. That is where we are right now. That is where Biden has put Palestine, and it's so awful. It's so wrong. Again, it breaks my heart every time when I talk about it. If you want to join me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. There'll be a lot of Gaza talk, both regarding this current administration's activities and the one coming in. Again, the news just could not get, it's just hard to believe it could ever get worse. But maybe it will. Again, Trump promising to make things even more awful. So is there any chance before he takes power? Well, U.S. Senator, my senator, one of my 2 senators, Chris Van Hollen, the other, Ben Cardin, is an unregenerate, unrepentant, unreconstructed Zionist. He is all in for Israel. He was behind the BDS, anti-BDS, right, anti-boycott, trying to make it illegal to even speak, right, to say, hey, we should stop buying products from Israel. That's Ben Cardin's view. Chris Van Hollen much better than Cardin, of course, but he's always been a loyal Democrat. He's always been a go along, get along kind of guy. Lately, he has stepped a little bit out of his comfort zone, and he's basically just said what we all should be saying, what we all should be thinking. But he's actually said it. And I guess for Congress, that's almost close to heroic in this administration, in this environment. So, not really mincing words, Chris Van Hollen, this was in yesterday's Post, history will judge Biden harshly on Gaza. I wondered whether, I assume he wanted this in the Washington Post. Van Hollen is a Maryland senator, and that's, I would assume, the newspaper that has the most circulation, more so than the New York Times, perhaps, in Maryland. A lot of people read the New York Times in Maryland. But I'm going to assume it is this is kind of our local paper, at least for the highly populated, the densely populated suburbs right around the city of D.C., north and east, and south, too, that include the state of Maryland, parts of the state of Maryland. So maybe he wanted it in the Washington Post. I would assume pretty much all of these politicos would prefer first to be in the New York Times, just because you get a little more, I think, more eyeballs and a little more influence perhaps, but maybe not. I would assume that if he did try to get this in the New York Times, well, if he did, he didn't get it in. But my guess is the Times wouldn't have published this. The Times has been so pro-Israel. Not that the Post hasn't, but I do seem to glean a little bit more willingness on occasion to take on the establishment. In this case, of course, it's not just the Democratic establishment, it is the Washington establishment. I give Van Hollen credit, again, for posting this, for publishing it. It's impressive. And we're going to go right through the history through the piece, because there's really nothing superfluous. He did, again, Van Hollen, I was talking to my wife about this yesterday, and she brought it up. She said, he would have won. He would have beaten Trump. And we don't know, but I believe that too. Just the way he speaks, he's much more plain spoken than Harris. He answers questions directly. I think he would have won. And it's really unfortunate because of the way the Democratic Party has played identity politics over the past, certainly since Hillary Clinton used the argument that Bernie's anti-big bank proposals, right? Break up the big banks, tax the billionaire class. And he made those proposals, and they were colorblind, right? Whoever the CEO of the bank is, I think they're almost all white. Maybe there's one or two big banks, or one bank that has a person of color running them. Maybe there's more than one now. But the argument that Hillary made against it was, well, this won't end racism. As though because breaking up big banks, taking on the financial services industry won't eradicate racism, we shouldn't even do it. That was her argument. And since then, the Democratic Party has leaned very, very heavily into identity politics to avoid actually talking about economic justice. Chris Van Hollen is very white. He is light-skinned. Pink skin, right? I'm sort of a little more sallow olive. He's very light. He has light hair, blonde hair. Even at now it's more silver, or it's really almost more white, but he's always been a towhead, I believe is the expression. And I just don't think that the African-American elites in the Democratic Party would have stood for Kamala to be replaced by Van Hollen. And I don't know that he was even interested, but this is a huge failure. It's a huge failure of our democracy that somebody who had better policies, who actually had policies. Now, I'm not saying I love Van Hollen, not that he's the greatest thing ever, but he would have been a much better candidate than Harris, and he would have been somewhat, in some ways, independent of the mic. And that's why, more than any other reason, he was not going to be afforded the chance to, if he had wanted to run, I believe. But he would have been a much stronger, much more persuasive presidential candidate and might well have won. I think he would have won. So here's what he writes. The president has a chance, here's what Van Hollen writes, has a chance to correct some of the mistakes he has made both before and during the war in Gaza, but only if he acts quickly and decisively. Any chance that he's going to act quickly and decisively? I would argue none. And we'll explain why even that little hope is gone in a little bit. But yes, maybe, just maybe, before Trump takes office. During his 2020 campaign, Biden pledged a return to a values-based foreign policy, which really is what our foreign policy should be all about. And he was very specific, according to Van Hollen, that would include Palestinian state, so two-state solution. I think we need one, but okay. Let's have a country. I mean, my gosh, at least a country for Palestinians. If we can't have one united Israel or Israel-Palestine or whatever you want to call it. So here are some of the commitments, according to Van Hollen. Reopen the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem for Palestinians and to stand against the expansion of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank, which, and I guess in Gaza too, which are horrific, horrible. Just destroying the lives of the people there. The settlers often using violence, shooting at Palestinians with impunity and immunity, stealing their land, making it ever more challenging to just survive as a Palestinian on the West Bank and Gaza. And according to Van Hollen, Biden said he would stop that. But what really happened? What happened? He failed to take any meaningful action, did Biden. And while he was not taking any action to stop Israel, to rein Israel in, to hold Israel to account, Bibi made things worse and worse and worse. And that, per Van Hollen, was a major catalyst for the October 7 attack. And I give Van Hollen a ton of credit for saying that too, because the narrative, the media narrative, the corporate media narrative is that October 7 came out of nowhere. These monsters, these animals, just decided they wanted to slaughter a bunch of civilians at a music festival. And Van Hollen won't have that. He says, no, things were getting worse and worse. There were all these extremists, ultra-right militants in Israel who were oppressing and persecuting, stepping up, ramping up the oppression. And that's why, that was the backdrop for October 7. So again, a lot of credit to Van Hollen for saying this. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. So he's saying, look, Biden made things worse. Biden didn't take action against Israel. Biden didn't stop Israel. Biden's going to be out of office in a couple of months, less than 2 months. So he needs to do something now. Who can dispute? By the way, this is again an argument. The fact that Biden has done nothing, and Harris, not only before the election, the argument as I heard it was, I rejected it. Well, they can't do anything. They would be jeopardizing the chances for Harris to win. They would be putting Trump in the White House. That was the argument. Okay, well, obviously, whatever they tried didn't work. But now Trump's going to be in the White House, so you got a month or so. You had 2 months as of November 6th. Now you have a little over a month. Time and again, Bibi has ignored. I just say, people say, why do you say Bibi? Because it's just easier than the whole Netanyahu. Time and time again, The Israeli government's ignored Biden's calls, and now we see more and more starving Palestinian civilians, more illegal settlement activities, no ceasefire activity, and all of that is coming with a blank check for bombs and offensive weapons. He lays this out so clearly, and you have to acknowledge, for those, we had to line up behind Harris. I would say, why was Harris anointed? Why wasn't there some process? I don't know that a primary would have been the best way, but why wasn't there some process to at least identify candidates who would have been able to articulate a better vision? And that wasn't Harris. The Democratic Party cannot be the solution. We have, maybe if there's meaningful alternatives, if there's an alternative to the left of the Democratic Party, and I guess some would argue there was. Trump was I would argue the meaningful alternative to the left of the Democrats was Jill Stein and the Greens. And that's who you should have voted for. But putting that aside, there was, many would say, a meaningful alternative to the left, and that was Trump, the authoritarian populist. At least he talked about ending the war in Ukraine. At least he talks about trade and the problems of the middle class. The solutions are by and large really bad. The way they're going to, round up this guy Homan, the holdover from the Obama administration, who's going to round up immigrants and put anyone in jail who tries to stop him, it's just terrifying. But that's what happens if Democrats forsake workers. They will embrace an extremist. What should we talk? Van Hollen doing a tremendous job setting out exactly what the Biden administration has done wrong. So what should they do now? And he, to his credit, and I always urge this, if we're going to complain, if we're going to whine, if we're going to say, well, this is what's wrong and that's what's wrong and the other thing is what's wrong, then we have a duty to provide some solutions. My solution, again, was the Green Party. My solution is an alternative to the Democrats. Van Hollen puts out a roadmap for Biden. Impose sanctions on Netanyahu's government. Anyone who's responsible for the violence, like Smotrich, and obviously Bibi, he doesn't go as far as he should, in my opinion, does Van Hollen, but he should be, putting sanctions against, obviously, the genocider in chief, that would be Bibi, and sending him to The Hague, or wherever the World Criminal Court meets, I don't really know. We must draw a red line against any further settlements. By the way, these are pretty much in line with what I've been saying, and a lot of people saying, oh, they can't do that. He can't do that. What else does Van Hollen say needs to be done? Well, he says that the government there, the Bibi government, must stop receiving military supplies. And I've also made that point repeatedly, that as long as they're out of compliance with, and this goes to that whole issue with the folks who were killed from the World Central Kitchen, they are restricting desperately needed humanitarian aid. Therefore, no more military supplies, no more military support. Why is this a tough one? Why would you defend Biden-Harris at this point in light of how awful they have been? By the way, sorry folks, if you're in the chat, you know what, I forgot about my chat. Hey Ari, wasn't checking my chat. Yes, I did bring, by the way, I see this. Yes, have you ever brought Green Party man Andy Else? I had Andy on just a couple of weeks ago. One of our more popular videos. Check that out, Ari, if you're hearing me now. It's right there in Halitics. You go to the videos, you should see the image of Andy. Or if not, yeah, Andy's on it along with Jill Stein. He's on the thumbnail along with Jill Stein and Dr. Butch Ware, who was Stein's running mate. So absolutely, check out that video and see what you think. By the way, Van Hollen doesn't stop. He doesn't just say, hey, no more, military aid and let's, we have to sanction these war criminals like Smotrich. He actually goes even further. So Van Hollen has a laundry list of what needs to be done to protect Gazans and to stop these war crimes committed by Israel. So this is pretty impressive that he will do this. I give him, again, good for you, Chris Van Hollen. So in addition to the actions already outlined, I just said, no more goods, right? So he's talking about a boycott, right? At least to a degree, not a full boycott of Israel, but he's saying we need a boycott. And we have to make sure that anything that comes from the settlements is so labeled and differentiated from those that come from Israel itself, Israel proper. I would say if it says Israel on it, don't buy it. Period. But what Van Hollen is saying is, well, we wouldn't boycott everything from Israel, but we'd boycott everything from the settlements. That's a very important first step for sure. And we must also, meaning the Biden-Harris must continue to show support for UNRWA, which Israel has banned, and keep providing financial aid to UNRWA, which I don't think we are doing, or not to the degree we should be. So these are all this laundry list of really important steps is what Van Hollen is saying the administration should do. Will it do it? No, almost certainly not. But let me just finish because he has one more, and he says this is maybe the most important of all. He says not only should Biden-Harris reopen that Palestine embassy in Jerusalem, but they also need to recognize a state of Palestine. Now, it's not unconditional recognition. I think there should be unconditional recognition. They say some terms, subject to terms, and especially this prisoner payments system. So I wasn't sure what prisoner payments meant, but prisoner payments is where apparently Hamas or the Palestinian Authority pays bounties to Palestinians who kill or capture. So it's called prisoner payment. So if they kill or capture Israelis, they get paid for that. That's what how Politico describes it. I assume that's accurate. I wouldn't put any conditions. Israel needs to recognize Palestine right now. But apparently there is law that says you can't recognize a country that pays bounties. So maybe that's part of what he's talking about. So Van Hollen nails it 100%, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. So Van Hollen, no mincing, well, yeah, he doesn't mince words. I wish he had been a little bit stronger. I wish he would be prepared to abandon the Dems, but he won't. None of them will. But still pretty good. Good job there. Pretty good. Pretty good. Will Joe Biden do anything about it? I was so angry, and I remain furious at Harris-Biden for all the talk. Donald Trump is an existential threat. Donald Trump will destroy our democracy. We have to stand against Donald Trump. As soon as Trump gets elected, Harris goes on vacation. She doesn't do a thing. She doesn't rally people. She doesn't say this is what we need to protect. This is what we need to defend. Here's how here's a roadmap. You'll want me to lead. She didn't do any of that. The other thing that Harris-Biden should have done is use this carrot approach too. Hey, some of the ideas that Donald Trump discussed on the campaign trail we actually agree with, which wouldn't be really false, certainly for Biden, like the tariffs, which Biden had embraced. And when it comes to the border wall, Harris embraced it, although she should, it's wrong, it's a terrible policy, but she could have said, hey, we get it. American wages are under assault. There too much competition from foreign workers through the free trade deals. So we agree with Trump on tariffs, but we also have to recognize that people coming into this country from the global south are struggling, and we need to make sure that they're protected. And there are ways, you talk about this and you don't just demonize Trump, but they don't even do that. They just go on vacation. And that's where Biden is right now. So all this horrible genocide is going on. Biden earmarks billions to continue ad nauseum the war in Ukraine, and at the same time does nothing when he has real power still to stop the genocide in Israel. In fact, where is he now? He's in Nantucket, and there's a lot of attention. He was apparently carrying a book out of the Nantucket book. So this is the playground of the billionaire class. I don't know if I would say Nantucket, is it even morally, it's harder to get to than Martha's Vineyard? Maybe. It's a little more windswept. I've been to both islands. They're nice. It used to be not quite as elite as it is now. But Nantucket is way the hell out. It's 3 hours by ferry into the Atlantic Ocean. It's small, it's windswept, there isn't a lot there. It's for the rich and, it's elite, what it is. So that's where he is, Nantucket Book Works, and he's carrying his, the 100 Years of War on Palestine. So it's a pro-Palestine book. It calls out Israel. You know what, Joe Biden? If you care about Palestine, do what Chris Van Hollen tells you. Don't go on vacation. Don't go to some bookstore. Don't pick up a book. I mean, it's fine. I'm glad you got it, I suppose, but it's not doing any good. What would do good is if you stood up to Bibi. You stood up to Israel. And you cut off all aid, all supplies, all support. Is that going to happen? No. But it'd be nice to see. Would be very nice for the Palestinian people. They finally have a little bit of hope. What am I doing? Always say, always talk about doing something. Always we got to do something. So I'm just going to continue. I've been checking the CodeBank website. They're my go-to right now. And I'll be down on the Hill probably Thursday. I've been going mostly Wednesdays because on Tuesday evenings I have a tutoring that I do. So I can't delay the reason that's an issue is I can't delay the start. I have to, if I go down to the Hill to lobby, if I go to the Senate or the House to lobby, I can't do my live stream at noon as I like to, the normal time. So I delay it. But since I also tutor on Tuesdays, I can't delay the live stream. So therefore I go down to the Hill on Wednesday or Thursday, and mostly Wednesdays. But this week, I think I'm going to go Thursday because there's going to be a briefing, I think, for our group by Scott Ritter, who has gotten an awful lot right about the futility, the counterproductive nature of the war on Iraq by the United States, how the Ukraine war has been an utter disaster, and also how terrible this war by Israel is on the people of Gaza. So that's what I'll be doing. If you're around, you want to go down and meet me, see me, codepink.org, and I'll be there Thursday. I'll let you know more tomorrow to confirm that. Israel is occupying Gaza, it's occupying the West Bank, and it is not leaving. It's hard to imagine under these terms, the situation, any kind of a ceasefire, any kind of peace. because Israel is now planning to occupy Gaza, I guess, forever, right? It's just going to become part of the greater, there's the Greater Reich. That was Hitler's vision. The Greater Reich would include much of Poland, Ukraine, areas where there were a lot of German speakers. Czechoslovakia, after they kicked out the Slavs or killed them, killed all the Jews, a lot of Slavs, Russians, doesn't matter, we're going to kill you if you're in our way. Israel's following the same, pursuing the exact same strategy here, building bases in central Gaza. It's there to stay. What they've done, and the New York Times, as much as I revile them and they won't stand up to Israel, the New York Times is actually letting you know that Israel's plan is to just completely wipe Gaza off the map. It will become part of Israel, or at least it will be occupied for the foreseeable future. And at some point, I guess, there'll be complete ethnic cleansing. That's what we're looking at. That's what Israel's doing. Here is a video. This is from their front page, drone footage that they captured. And again, I mentioned October 12th. So this is before the election. This is with the full support, the full backing, the use of our weapons, our technology, our software to, fly these drones and to blow buildings up. So there's a drone that blows the building up, and there's a drone that captures the footage of the building being blown up. So one moment it's there, and then the next it's not. Just gone. Gone. That's what Israel's doing. And why is it doing that? Because it's creating this corridor. Let me see if I can get that just a little bit more complete for you. It's going to cut Gaza right in half. So there's not even communications between the northern and southern half. And you can see the shaded area. The red spots are their bases, permanent buildings where they've blown up pretty much that whole area, like all of Gaza has been leveled. But now they're starting to rebuild in those places, presumably for Israeli bases, so they can maintain this corridor between Israel, which is south, and the Mediterranean. It's reminiscent of the Gdansk corridor, where Germany had a hole cut. Well, actually, it was Poland, right? Poland was split with, or Germany. East Prussia was on the east side of Danzig, and then they had a little port there for Poland. So it's that's where we are. It is a dystopian nightmare we're living through, courtesy of both parties. I mean, you can't blame Trump for any of this, but you can be afraid that Trump may make things even worse. This is from the real Donald Trump. This is from Truth Social, right? I actually joined Truth Social because just to see if I could, but then I didn't. I thought about joining it, but they wanted a lot of information, and that you have to follow at least 3 people when you start. And they're all, it's not like you follow anyone you want. It's follow, I guess, their people, their big names. So people like Jason Aldean, who's this right-wing country music. I mean, there were tons of names. I don't know. That one stood out at me. Trump, the real Donald Trump. You didn't have to, fortunately, you don't have to subscribe to get to his Truth Social. So there it is. You think, by the way, wouldn't you, that he'd be on X, since it's his buddy there, Musk, who owns it, but regardless. He says if Israel doesn't get the hostages aren't released by Gaza, then all hell to pay. So I don't know how it could be worse, but maybe it could be. I'm quite scared. I'm very, very worried about all of this. It's a horrible situation. humanitarian crisis. I think we have a duty. I've said this many times. We have a duty to stop it, to stand up to it as best we can. I don't know if we will. Doubt we will. It looks like nothing's going to happen. All right. I like to think I'm pretty good. I like to think I get most things right. But I said yesterday something that apparently was not correct, or at least arguably not correct. So let me play the clip first and try to get it centered for you a little bit. So we'll play this is from yesterday's Halitics, and then I'll show you the comment I received, and we can judge if I'm right or wrong. He wasn't saying I'm going to put all these people in jail. And it's clear he wasn't. He didn't say I'm going to get, Adam Schiff. And I'm going to get, who's that guy? Raskin, right? Because they were the ones who led the prosecutions against me. I'm going to go after those people. He didn't say that. He said, for those of you that were locked up by Mueller, that the Mueller investigation caught up in its net, I'm your retribution. In other words, the people hate me. The Democrats hate me. The Democratic Party hates me. So when I win, we're getting back at them. That's what he said. Right, kind of scary, right? Two Hal heads right there, right at you, one lower, one high. So my point was, that all the media focus on Trump vengeance, and Trump's going to go after his political enemies, and he's got a hit list. It's overstated, it's exaggerated. But, two things could be true. It could be true that the media ventilates over Trump every time, hyperventilates every time he turns over in his sleep. That can be true. It can also be true that he's a vengeful, scary guy. And that probably is about as accurate as we're going to get when it comes to Trump. That, the Democratic, controlled media, not all media, right? Not all media is controlled by the Democrats, but the New York Times certainly the most influential of all. And I think the Washington Post could be characterized as largely controlled by Democrats at this point. Their stories are going to always paint Donald Trump as satanic, regardless of the truth, diabolical, evil. And they're always going to try to reduce, they're always going to throw shade on Trump and always try to make the Democrats look okay, look reasonable. So after I posted that, or I said that on live, I got this text. Well, wait a second, Hal. Trump did say literally that the other side was evil and that he was going to go after Schiff. So let's play that clip. Because what I said was he didn't say, I'm going to get them, right? My point was Trump has never specifically, directly said, I'm going to prosecute my political enemies. And I identified Schiff and Pelosi. Trump has talked about Schiff and Pelosi. Let's see what he actually said. Here we go. This is Fox.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
All right, so he's a scary guy. He says, there's going to be these radical leftists who are going to interrupt my inauguration. If I win, nothing will happen if it's Trump people, although obviously something pretty bad happened when it was Trump people. Now, I'm not going to call that like an insurrection, whatever you want to call it, but it was a riot. It was a, entry into the halls of power. I get why they're so angry. Congress is awful. I get, Thomas Jefferson said, I think the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of tyrants. every decade or so, something of that nature. I don't have that quote exactly right. The Congress is completely unresponsive to the poor, struggling, and working people in this country. And that justifies, I believe, to a very significant degree, them going in there. But still, it wasn't good. So Trump is saying, well, there's this enemy from within, these leftists, and we're going to have to deal with them with the National Guard or maybe even the military. It's pretty scary. It's scary stuff. He's saying that enemy from within. So how does that pertain to Schiff? How does that pertain to Pelosi? I didn't identify Pelosi as somebody he viewed as a potential enemy the way I did Schiff and Raskin for impeaching him. But Trump does talk about Schiff and Pelosi.
Former President Trump yesterday repeated his claim that, quote, the enemy from within is a greater threat to the U.S. than any foreign adversary. Trump recently suggested deploying U.S. troops to target his political opponents. And in an interview that aired yesterday on Fox News, he went so far as to identify two of his rivals, Representative Adam Schiff of California, who led the first impeachment inquiry into Trump, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
We have a lot of bad people. But when you look at Shifty Schiff and some of the others, yeah, they are, to me, the enemy from within. I think Nancy Pelosi is an enemy from within. She lied. She was supposed to protect the Capitol. She said that to her daughter just recently. It was found on the tape from her daughter, who's a documentary maker. She said, this is my responsibility. She admitted it. But I offered her 10,000 National Guard troop, anything she wanted. No, but she didn't take them. She should have taken them.
Investigations determined military leaders confirmed that Trump did not offer to send National Guard troops to the Capitol on January 6th. And Pelosi, who was not, despite Trump's claim, in charge of Capitol security, did not turn down any offer of troops.
All right, so I'll stop there. But yeah, Trump's full of crap. That's just BS. He didn't, he was complicit in whatever happened on January 6th. He certainly riled up the crowd. He certainly, was looking to prevent, it seems, I think it's clear, he was trying to prevent orderly transition of power because he lost the election, and he never refuses to acknowledge that. The guy's clearly disturbed, and he's a narcissist, and he's, very, in one way, he's an enormous ego, but in another way, he's, pathetic. And if he's challenged, if people question him, he's deflated. He has to lash out. This is who we elected because of whom the Democrats nominated, appointed, anointed. We didn't even vote for them. 240-242-5646. Ari's dropping out. I get it. It is one, but I'm going to keep going. I got a little more to go. And I also want to get to Kash Patel. Maybe we won't do Kash today. So I wanted to get a little more from Patel. One more point. So the linkage is that Trump calls Schiff and Pelosi an enemy from within. And I have huge issues with what both did, especially Schiff. This guy is a warmonger of the first water. He's a liar. He's really a despicable person. Terms like enemy from within make it impossible to have dialogue. Just like I wouldn't call Trump an enemy from within, although I think he's causing terrible, terrible harm to our nation. But there are people with power. Let's see if we can. Is there any way, if we can't work with them, at least, try to take them down by pointing out the bad things they've done and trying to replace them. Tragically, Adam Schiff will now be a U.S. Senator. A little more from Trump, and we'll wrap it up. But did Trump, so Trump says we need the National Guard and maybe the U.S. military to protect me at my inauguration. Ridiculous. But, because you have the Capitol Police, right? You got a lot of folks there. You should be able to protect yourself. But, all right, maybe the National Guard in times of national emergency, you can not bring the military in. Here's to finish this off.
Surprises me.
What about that, though? Are you expecting chaos on Election Day?
No, I don't think so. Not from the side that votes for Trump.
But I'm just wondering if these outside agitators will start up on election day. Let's say you win. I mean, let's remember, you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You've got people on the terrorist watch list, 350 in the last couple of years. You've got, like you said, 13,000 murderers and 15,000 rapists.
Right.
What are you expecting? Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
Well, he doesn't have any idea what's happening in all fairness. He spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within.
So again, there's that clip one more time. And it's scary, but he's not saying he's going to go after Schiff and Pelosi. He's not. It's clear he's not. He's using the same term, the enemy from within, to describe leftist agitators that he's afraid will disrupt his precious second inauguration. And that's who he would use the National Guard or the military to stop, which he should not do, which is terrifying in and of itself. But he isn't saying he's going after his political enemies. It's not true. That's not the case. So what I said was accurate, but it didn't fully encompass this man's paranoia, this man's fears. And we're living in a very, very bad place. We're in a very bad place. We're in a very bad time. We have two terrible parties. We have terrible leadership. Hope we learn from our mistakes and maybe start becoming much, much more open to alternatives to the Republicrats, because we're living on borrowed time. I'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy your day.